Before starting a career in law enforcement, he was a professional actor. During his career in law enforcement, he did patrol. He retired to the rank of lieutenant, and he also spent several years doing deep undercover work. And he's coming up.
Welcome to the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. In the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we are joined by special guests talking about their experiences, the realities of investigating crimes, plus those who have experienced horrendous trauma. Police, first responders, military, and victims of crime share their stories. Hi, I'm John J. Wiley. In addition to being a broadcaster, I'm also a retired police sergeant. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com, and also like us on Facebook. Search for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. If you want to be a guest on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, simply contact us. It couldn't be easier. You can send us a message on Facebook. Look for and like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show page, or email jay@letradio.com. That's JAY@letradio.com.
Calling us from New Haven, Connecticut, Ray Hassett on the phone. Ray is a retired law enforcement officer from New Haven, Connecticut. Ray, thanks so much for joining us on the show.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you. We're going to be talking about some things that a lot of people don't tend to understand, I think in part due to Hollywood, the news media, and just on conversation. You are experiencing many forms of law enforcement, but your expertise is in undercover, and I mean serious undercover work, correct?
The term actually would be deep cover, yes.
All right, and then we'll get into differences, because I get this all the time. And one of the things that happens to me is I worked plainclothes narcotics for many years. People say, oh, you're undercover. No, I wasn't. There's a big difference, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Before we get into your story, and exciting story, and very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's going to be enlightening. It's stuff you'll want to hear that Ray will be talking about. Ray does a lot of training for deep cover work now, correct?
Well, the work that I do now is more toward de-escalation training for police, connection training for police, on how to better connect with another person in crisis. There's a lot of similarities to doing that type of work where you're under the gun all the time, but when you're out with the public, dealing with the public now, who is increasingly emotionally driven, emotionally overwrought, can't self-regulate. When you're on the front lines, whether it's law enforcement or whether you're in retail, you got to know how to connect with people, how to listen to people, how to kind of recognize the emotion and let them tell their story so that you can get to where you need to be with them in order to manage, whatever your job is. So a lot of my job now is teaching people to slow it down, to listen more for emotion, and basically keep themselves out of the story. And there's a lot of similarities.
So a lot of what you learned in deep cover work applies here.
Absolutely.
And we used to say police work, you meet people always when they're having a bad day, a bad incident, it's an accident, they were stolen from, they got a family dispute, whatever it was. It was never a good encounter. And our job was to try to make it as good an encounter as possible. And most of the time we did. It was not, we didn't use terms like de-escalation back in the day. It was just something you were taught. Likewise with community policing, that was a term we were never told about. It was regular patrol, and that's what everybody did. I don't want to get lost in that conversation yet. Where can people get more information about the training you provide, availability, and all of that?
If you go to my website, www.rayhassett.com, you get pretty much an idea of what I'm doing, and they can start from there.
So it's rayhassett.com. Spell Hassett, please.
Hassett.
All right. Check it out, rayhassett.com. About how long was your total police career from start to finish?
I did 25.
Oh, well, thank you for your service. That's a long time. I got retired at the ripe old age of 33. I got hurt and was retired very, very young, and then had to figure out what I want to be when I grew up. So I had to make that decision way earlier than I thought, and it was a big, big transition. 25 years in law enforcement in any department, especially one where it is you're exposed to so much trauma and violence, is stressful. If someone's done a lot of deep undercover work or deep cover work, I can't even begin to understand the amount of stress that goes with that.
Well, it's just to double back to my career. The last 14 years of my career was in patrol, and I ran one of the busiest districts in my city, inner city, and I ran it from my car. So I was out there every day learning how to shift, how to adapt, how to keep myself out of the story. And the biggest thing I learned, and there's a parallel here between deep cover and connecting with people. I had to learn who I was when people didn't need me.
Mm-hmm. Not quite sure I understand what that means. Elaborate on that a little bit.
So what that means is a lot of times in law enforcement, we're problem solvers. We show up, you tell me what you need me to do, and I'll help you to do it. In old school, that used to be the case. We show up, you better come correct because we got the solution.
Right.
Somewhere around 1999, that all shifted. People said, you know what, I don't know if I like this guy. My last experience with that last cop, man, that didn't go well. So, I had to rethink, wait a minute. I mean, if I'm out there every day, I'm locking people up. I'm with dead babies. I'm with their grandmother when she's passing away. I'm part of that whole dysfunctional family. That changes shift from just being a reactor. 911, look at the cat call, show up. All right, I've got to make it fit into probable cause. Officer safety, get in, get out, lock them up, and I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
Had to completely get rid of that.
Because most of what we do in law enforcement is not involving locking people up. That was a small percentage of what we did.
You're exactly right.
Most of it was what you talked about, dealing with people at their where they have the worst situations imaginable going on. And for a lot of people, like where I worked, it was constant because it was a high crime area. It was constant exposure to crime and violence. And these people wanted you to help them.
Yes.
Sad part is a lot of times we weren't able to help. We just did the best we could. And I had to become okay with that was the best I could do. That was it.
Well, I think and where the training comes in is we now realize that when we both went through our careers, your first 5, you got to figure stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
Come out of the academy, first thing the FTO says to you, forget everything you learned in the academy. So you basically, you're picking stuff up. That didn't work. You're borrowing somebody else's style. Yeah, I'll take that. But you're piecing it together.
Right.
But that's where things are the rawest. And that's where the training is the least. So in terms of what I'm training now is we're plugging in high-end behavioral training to young street cops just coming out of the academy, if only to get them thinking about it. So it's shifting young cops from being warriors to the same time to being gladiator diplomats. I read people for threat, first of all, but what else is going on in their last 8 hours? Getting cops and getting civilians on the front lines to think like that slows you down.
Right.
Changes everything. The brain is funny. The brain follows with what you prompt. If I'm looking at somebody and automatically I'm reading them as a criminal, I'm going to talk to them like they're a criminal. I'm going to miss stuff.
What's the old saying that we had, if the only tool you possess is a hammer, everything begins to look like a nail. So if you look at everybody as a potential criminal and a potential threat of violence to you, that's how you're going to respond. And that's how they're going to respond to you.
Absolutely.
And vast majority of people are not. Even in the highest crime areas that you and I both worked in, the busiest places, the vast majority of people weren't criminals. They were just regular hardworking folks, and they were having problems. They could have had a bad day. They could have had a kid that was out of control, and they want you to solve it without turning their whole life upside down.
Well, I think to both our points, the time I spent in major crimes as a detective, when you're interviewing someone in order to get a confession about a homicide, you're not yelling at them.
No,
you're not telling them to do this, do that. You're basically treating them like a human being, giving them a chance to reflect on where they're at and make a right choice. You can't push that stuff.
No, and you've got to. People don't know how to get this too. And I know you're going to get what I'm saying right away. Is that when you're doing an interview with someone, let's say they did the most heinous crime you could ever imagine, and deep inside you just want to throttle this person. Number one, you can't it's against the law. Number two, you don't want to ruin a good case because you put your hands on someone. But number three, you don't get any information from the bad guy if you come across as a heavy. You got to act like you're their friend. You understand, you know, and develop a rapport. And that is certainly a skill set that's learned. We are talking with Ray Hassett, talking about deep undercover work. We're talking about de-escalation. We're talking about a lot of things. Very unique conversation from a guy who's been there. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.
You can find us on Facebook. Look for and like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page. This portion of the radio show is brought to you in part by Pet Rescue Life Facebook page. Everyone's welcome at the Pet Rescue Life Facebook page, where you'll find fun, informative, and enjoyable posts daily. Purebred, mixed breeds, rescues, we love them all. Be sure to like the Pet Rescue Life Facebook page.
Back to our conversation with Ray Hassett, retired New Haven, Connecticut police officer. And Ray, just a brief synopsis of career, done patrol, did work in the streets, and also did deep cover work or undercover work for a long period of time as well. The whole concept of undercover I find to be fascinating for several reasons. When I think of undercover, Ray, I think of people like Jay Dobbins from ATF. I think of people like the guy who did Donnie Brasco, I can't remember his name, from the FBI. And when I worked in Baltimore, we had very few people who were deep undercover. And a lot of them, what they would do is they were taken right out of the academy. As soon as they graduated, they weren't on the street because people get to know you, and you're in an environment where you can't be recognized as police. So they brought into the undercover ranks and taught how to do it. And it was a very long process, something I've never done. I worked plainclothes narcotics for many years, and people always say, so you're undercover? I'd say, no. There's a big, big difference. Would you elaborate on the difference between the two?
Well, I first of all, the deep cover is a job for only the few. When you're undercover, it means you still carry a shield.
Right.
You still go back to the station house. Your colleagues still basically are your colleagues. You know, you do an operation, you're in and you're out, and then you go back home. Deep cover is something entirely different. Deep cover is completely giving up any law enforcement identity. You formally resign from law enforcement. You formally, you can tell no one why you're resigning. You disappear, and basically you're given a different identity with all different credentials, and basically you begin working pretty much alone. You're never off. When you have that new identity, that identity is you, and you have to be able to believe that, carry it off in situations where you're by yourself. You got to figure stuff out. There is no backup. It's all on you. So I kind of frame it in a way, because I did it for 2 years. It's the ultimate betrayal of another human being.
You got to be a serious actor too. And by the way, you hit the nail on the head, because I was thinking of people, I didn't even know they were police anymore until retirement, or 10, 15 years later, when they came out of deep cover work. Because they graduated academy, they did a month or two later, they resigned, and we're like, hey, where did Joe go? We didn't know. And then we found out later on, oh, we didn't even know they're police anymore, and they were doing this. If you were known in the department, like our plainclothes units, if you were known, people knew who you weren't undercover, you weren't deep cover, for example, better words. The ones who were deep cover, even street police like me, didn't know who they were.
Well, you've got to lose all your police tells. You know, my case is a little bit different. I had law enforcement was my second career. My first career was as a professional actor. So I had training in reading people and understanding emotion. I'd worked in different cultures. I had a lot of life experience, so that I came to the table is probably one of the reasons why I was chosen. I had some skills, and looking at it in the rearview mirror, a job like this is an actor's dream. It's a cop's nightmare.
Yeah. I don't think I could do it.
On the other side.
It takes a special person. Like I said, only very few can do this. The amount of pressure. I'll just give you a real brief story. I was assigned to go try to do an undercover drug buy and work in plain clothes. And I always wore, I'm not going to give the secret away, but it didn't go well. But the entire time, I did not feel like they were convinced, and they apparently weren't. I just wasn't cut out for that. And I'm the stereotypical cop-looking guy. I'm still told that even all these years later.
And you have a good point, because people who are working, they're hypervigilant. They have extremely good radar.
Mm-hmm.
So, if it's a one-off, that maybe you can fake it. But, when you go years with people, you're breaking bread with people, you're breaking bread with their families. You're basically, you're making cases, you've already made cases on people, and you're still breaking bread and hanging out and being that character. In hindsight, incredibly stressful. And then when you come back out again, here's the rub: nobody trusts you.
On either side, or just the criminal side?
On either side. Your own people. So because where you been, and you come back and you work in that world, and you hear a lot of stuff. And some people, what'd you hear? So
police tend to be pretty cynical people too. And one of the things I could see naturally saying, well, I hope you didn't do anything illegal or anything criminal, did you? And that's one of the first things to be going through your mind, but I would know not to ask that.
There's on the front end, before people start accepting it, there's all sorts of tests that you have to pass. Nobody lets you in. Let me tell you, nobody lets you in right off the rip.
You mean the bad guys when you go undercover? Well, I watched like the Donnie Brasco story, and how long it took him to go from just hanging out in a bar to gain the confidence with the cover of being a jewel guy, using the story, paraphrasing the story. And then all of a sudden, hey, we need you to do something. And then the trust began to build very slowly. But from the movie, it seemed they did that in 10 minutes. But from what I understand, it took months and months.
It took me about 6 months to be accepted.
And what kind of criminal organization was it you're going after without getting into specifics?
It was organized crime.
Okay. So when we think of things like mafia or those type organizations, that's what we're talking about. Yeah,
it's very similar.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a stereotype we use that a lot of people are familiar with because they see it in Hollywood and movies and television and everything else, so they get an idea we're talking about. But the vast majority of them, and I'm not an expert in this area, but the vast majority of these criminal organizations are not mafia style. They're much different.
And that was kind of what I got into. It was a criminal enterprise. It had signatures of a lot of different stuff, but it was a criminal enterprise.
And one of the hardest ones I understand are the ethnic groups, like the MS-13s and places like that, because you can't fake your ethnicity. You've got to be traced back to a certain country, and people have to be able to vouch for you there. So that's a little bit different beast than we're talking about with maybe motorcycle, 1% motorcycle gangs, or, again, the old mafia and those sort of things. They take a really long time. We're going to get into some of those stories and some of the details. And I realize you can't go into great depth about these, so we'll talk about it generally. We'll talk about it vaguely, but there's been a lot of interesting things coming up. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Get access to free podcast versions of the show and more on Facebook. Do a search for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and be sure to click like.
Conversation with Ray Hassett. Ray retired from New Haven, Connecticut Police Department. And by the way, what rank were you when you retired?
Retired at the rank of lieutenant.
That's a great accomplishment. And people, that's another thing, misnomer that people don't understand is that, I retired at the rank of sergeant. And very rarely do I correct people about things. But one of the few things I do correct them about is if they'll say ex-police. And I'm like, no, No, I'm retired. And they go, oh, you're retired
Yes.
police officer. No, I'm retired sergeant. And because it took a lot of work to get that rank. And
Yes, it
not
does.
everybody gets it. It doesn't mean to be treated differently. We went through the same things. But the hierarchy, by the way, for my world, is you have retired. And that doesn't mean you retire with a pension. That can mean you left because you just didn't want to do it anymore. Former also falls in that category. And X means someone who was fired or quit under pressure of being fired. So to me, the term X is a big insult, and I don't stand for it.
I agree, 100%.
So thank you for your service. And one of the things that's fascinating about our conversation, Ray, is that, A, you came from an acting background before you went into law enforcement. In law enforcement, you did everything from patrol, sergeant, lieutenant. You did serious, deep cover work as well. So you must have quite the skill set when it comes to people skills.
I think it's, and I'm learning every day. It is the whole package has made me a pretty good listener, a pretty good reader of human behavior, and also realizing that I've got to watch myself when I'm talking with someone or I'm in a situation where there's communication that's necessary, because I don't want to influence that. I want the basis for good communication and the basis for being a successful actor is you make the exchange all about the other person. I already know who I am. Mm-hmm. I want to get to know who you are, but there's certain verbal, nonverbal cues that I use in my training and that I've learned as a human being and also as a good listener, where people are comfortable talking with you. And that's so much not the case with our culture today, whether it's retail, a lot of time in policing, people are talking at us. Mm-hmm. They're doing 20 things at once. This whole piece is about slowing it down. And how I survived those years is by making every exchange I had with somebody, I was 100% present for them. But on the other hand, I'm watching my back 150% and not letting them know that I'm doing it.
Because there's no one else there. When you're doing deep cover, you're by yourself.
You're by yourself all the time. And somebody gets out, somebody goes to use the restroom, and they come back. You've got to read them to see if they have information that can end up hurting you or getting you killed. But you've got to do it in such a way that it's smooth. Nobody is alarmed. Nobody is like, hey, what's up with that thing? And he's all hyper. No, be nice and calm.
One of the things that I think has, to a lesser degree than what you're talking about, is in my years in police work, you begin to read people very, very well, but you have to learn how to do it. And what I try to do is have them talk about themselves and very little about me. And
yes,
people's favorite topic are themselves. Face it, we're, as by nature, especially nowadays, more self-centered, more self-absorbed than ever. And so people love to tell you about themselves. I'm sure with all of your experience and training, that has come into play in other aspects, even away from law enforcement.
Yes, and in the training I do now, I do de-escalation training, but the front end piece is connection training. And the thing that I work on the most with people is getting them to connect with people as early on as possible and connect often. It could be something as simple as saying good morning, good afternoon. When you're walking down the street, you're making eye contact with people, etc. There's a whole nonverbal signature in communicating with people that we forget because we're always talking. And communication is 93% nonverbal anyway, but we're always talking.
Right.
So, my training is a lot. We borrow a lot from the way animals survive and read people in order to be more effective humans. So I was training the other day, and I had a person in my class come up and tell me a story about how that worked for a person they knew. And it was a moving moment. And basically, this is what happened. The person who came up had a relative who was recently killed in one of the active shooter incidents in the United States. Not going to center it any. It was one of many that continues to occur. And so she told a story of a relative of hers who was killed by the gunman. And prior to being killed, he saved a number of people by putting them getting them to safety in a locked room. And they asked him, "Aren't you coming in with us?" He said, "No, I'm going to go out and see if I can save some more people." At that point, he ran into the gunman. The gunman killed him, put 4 rounds in him. The 4th one was a coup de grace. But what this woman wanted to share, this student of mine, was that one of the survivors had told her a story of her confrontation with the gunman. As the gunman moved through that company, she fell to the ground and the gunman stood over her. And she didn't know him by name. She had exchanged glances with him in the weeks prior, just in passing, a nod. And that nod, when he looked down at her, pointing his weapon at her, he paused, put the gun up, and moved on, and basically spared her life because she had connected with him. She had been present for him. She didn't know what she was doing, I don't think, but the point is that little move saved her life. And from my point of view, it was riveting to hear it. But by the same token, I train that way. I want the skills that I train anybody now, I want them to be survival skills. And that was such a perfect example of how this stuff works. Simple. No words, no tricks, connection.
Simple things that people used to do all the time back when I was younger. I mean, I watched some of the old movies, Ray, and the first thing that comes to my mind, you see the old thing where men would always wear a hat and they'd always tip their hat when they saw someone. They would do that, or someone make a way of saying hello. Seemed that we have lost a lot of that as a society, that we don't acknowledge each other, and that simple act of acknowledging the other person probably saved their life.
It did. And if you look at the wider picture, if you go macro, the outlier, the person, that active shooter, he didn't blow up overnight.
No.
It was a slow process. But the people next to him probably missed it, or they didn't want to say to him, "Hey, man, today you're different. What's up?" They read it. They did nothing about it.
Around us every day, we have people self-destructing. We have people...
Yes.
And in law enforcement, it's... People use the term epidemic, but it's not. It's been going on since you were a rookie police and I was a rookie police. We have people, mental health, stress issues, suicide issues. It's been a big issue. And we always say, I didn't see any of the signs. So even with each other, we're ignoring and we're not having the conversations we should have.
Well, I mean, to both our points, a lot of the work that we're doing now is peer support. And I'm training police as well in self-care, wellness, and also to pay attention to the signs. And, we are brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Bottom line, that's through good and bad. I don't care. Listen, if you're jammed up on a job, you're going to get fired. Hey, we still went through doors together.
That's
I
absolutely
still owe
right.
it to you.
Even when someone has to leave the job because they really royally messed up, I have a good friend. People thought we were brothers and cousins, and we talk periodically. He carries some shame about that, but I still view him as the same old guy. We're talking with Ray Hassett, retired New Haven, Connecticut police lieutenant, very skilled in deep cover work, people skills, and how these things not only apply in police work, but apply for everybody else in general life. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Are you looking for great products that can be game changers for people, for their physical health, for their overall well-being? Go to letpops.com. That's letpops.com. I take these products. They make a world of difference for me. Better energy. I sleep better every night. Full night's sleep every night. 0 leg cramps and more. Many people will tell you about the wonderful things that these products do for them. Plus, it can be a phenomenal business opportunity. You can help people improve their lives, and for a very small fee, get a complete back end, complete website, 0 inventory, no shipping, none of that stuff. Get full details on our website, letpops.com. That is letpops.com.
This is the Law Enforcement Show. I'm John J. Wiley, talking with retired New Haven, Connecticut Police Lieutenant Ray Hassett. Ray, thanks so much for being on the show. Very much appreciated.
My pleasure.
You do so much training. First of all, I'm fascinated with the fact that you were an actor before going to law enforcement. Then you did 25 years in law enforcement. A part of that, deep cover for about 3 years with serious organized crime networks. Then did patrol, then done everything that law enforcement can do. My hat's off to you because I never did the deep undercover work. So I'm as fascinated by that as anybody else. But the thought that you were taking what you've learned from all these years, and you're helping other police and other law enforcement with de-escalation, with connecting, with communications, is phenomenal. But I get the sense that you also offer this to other organizations. You mentioned retail many times.
Yeah, I just, the work has grown into training the public. I mean, I've trained elementary school teachers. I have young kids. I've trained the teachers at my kids' school. I'm training librarians, ironically enough. I'm training security staff. I'm training nurses and docs in the emergency room of Trauma One hospitals. It's funny. It's led me opening all these different doors that I never thought I'd walk through. And, one of the things that I do to remain current is I don't teach anybody until I walk in their shoes. So, I've done tours in the ED. You and I have both dropped a lot of people off in the emergency room.
Yeah.
We've never worked in there. So I just recently started training bus drivers, transit workers, transit operators. So let me take the city bus. I haven't taken a city bus in 20 years. Jay, I'm telling you, it was one of the most meaningful learning experiences I've ever had. I mean, I'm talking about raw human life. 20 people coming on the bus, hot, and you got to figure out as the operator how to somehow connect with every one of them so that you're bringing them back down, all having a rough day, and you can make your route. And it was classic experience for me. Makes me a better instructor, makes me sharper, more current.
I can't tell you the last time I took a bus. And I'm sitting here listening to you talking about taking the bus, and it brings back memories of being a young man. We didn't have all the transportation options I have available and feeling stressed out. You know what stresses me out more than anything else? The airport, going through TSA.
Yes.
And then all worked up, and this is what's coming through my mind when you're talking about training retail. I get off the plane, I finally get my bag, I get all that stuff done, and I'm thinking, I got to get to rent a car. And if there's the slightest problem with the rent a car, it's so easy for those people when they're stressed out, they're anxious to get amped up and take it out on the rental car agent. If that agent doesn't have their proper skill set and training to de-escalate, they can create a real problem for that company and for the company image.
Well, I think to your point, that person, that next person you meet when you're stressed, that's the most important person in your life.
Yeah.
At that moment.
Yeah. I'm getting worked up just thinking about the airport right now.
Yeah, I get you. I do a lot of international stuff.
Well, it is the whole thing of, you know what it is for me, Ray? I don't know how these men and women do it, but it's a TSA. First of all, the check-in with the ticket is one thing, but getting to the TSA, my mind is racing. I'm sitting there with a crowd of people. I'm there way early, but I'm thinking, if I don't get to this line, I'm not going to get to the flight. I'll miss my flight. I'm going to make it there. I hope they don't pat me down. The whole 9 yards. They got to be really good at reading people and calming them down, but I'd love to say they are, but most of the ones I've encountered are not. They're very cold. Yeah.
Well, I think it comes back to training, to get them to understand how much stress these people are coming through on a routine basis. A lot of times for a lot of people, their job is just moving meat. And that's where we're getting caught up. And that's where we're changing our culture. Empathy.
Is that something you think is going on? Is that something you think is happening nationwide with our culture? Not just that profession. Not just. I hate to pick on TSA, the airports, or rental car companies, but I can see that happening with everybody. And here's a classic example. I hate when people text me something or send me an email. My partner could have the best intentions in the world, and I always read it the wrong way. And when I send something back, especially if I'm trying to be somewhat assertive but not mean, they always read it the wrong way. Is that part of the problem? We've lost a lot of our communication skills because we're not talking to each other?
Well, I think whatever you do the most, let's put it in terms of CrossFit, whatever exercise you do the most, you're the strongest at.
Right.
The exercise that you probably do the least in the gym is hamstrings. It's painful. So most of our communication in our culture now is texting, or it's Instagram, and that's, you're missing voice, you're missing nuance, you're missing how the person presents, you're missing what's the context that you're talking in. So you tend to just think that I send these words out, you're going to get what I mean, which it never happens. And let me go up to 3,000 feet here. I work overseas a lot. I train in different cultures. I teach also behavior profiling. So in different cultures other than our own, when you're dealing with somebody, they're pretty much 100% present when you're speaking, communicating. Part of it is language. They need maybe they probably speak 4 languages or 5, but there's cultural nuances that they're concentrating on. So you're right there for each other. It's very rare to make a mistake in misreading somebody when you're one-on-one. Here in our culture, we're always multitasking. I go to the bank, I put in my money, and the tellers are talking to each other. Hey, it's my money. Who's the most important person in this transaction? It's me, yet I'm the least most important person.
Gotcha.
And if you start looking at culture, even in the emergency room, if you're not really sick, you wait, and you wait for 7 hours, 8 hours. Nobody comes over to you and says, "Hey, how you doing?" It's just moving meat, priority. If you look sick, you get the Cadillac treatment. If you don't look sick, wait and figure it out.
And this is coming from
all the bad feeling.
I don't mean this as an insult, but all this insight is coming from a street cop.
Yes,
because that's how I viewed myself when I retired. Is like, now what can I do? I don't know what. It turns out we're very good at a lot of different things, especially when it deals with people. And you're passing out information that, I be honest with you, a lot of PhDs that I hear and I see on television don't have that skill set that you have, that a lot of street cops have.
Well, in 100%, and why this, and reminding us that we have this skill set is tremendous in terms of when helping other people. Mm-hmm. We spend years reading people for threat, but at the same time we're getting this tremendously accurate instinct on understanding behavior. Now, when you put us in the civilian sector, where people, all they need is help, they're not going to hurt us. That it not only does it rejuvenate cops, but it says, wow, usually you finish a career of 25 years, you're beat. The agencies beat you. You low self-esteem. You got post-traumatic stress. This is a way to regenerate us and recycle us and bring our heads back up again. Wow, man, let's get us back in the game, and we can do all this.
We can do a lot of great things to help contribute to society. We got to wrap things up here, Ray. Before we leave, I want people to know where they can get more information about you and all the training you offer.
Just go to my website, www.rayhassett.com. They can reach out to me that way, and let's start from there. I'd love to hear from people. And
are you on Facebook and all that stuff?
From doing deep cover work, I'm still dark.
Well, we got to get you out into the sunlight sometime in the very near future. And definitely have you back on the show because there's so many things we can talk about. Ray Hassett, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, brother.
I'd like to thank our guests for coming on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. The Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show is a nationally syndicated weekly radio show broadcast on numerous AM and FM radio stations across the country. We're always adding more affiliate stations. If you enjoyed the podcast version of the show, which is always free, please do me a favor and tell a friend or 2 or 3. I'll be back in just a few days with another episode of the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast. Until then, this is John J. Wiley. See ya.